Andrew, hit us with that spoiler cast theme song. I like. And you had to break the silence.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's perfect theme song for the movie Silence. We're going to talk spoilers on Silence. If you want to hear the full review, of course, you can check in the podcast proper, where we talk a little bit about the movie in general. But now to get into the nitty-gritty details of Martin Scorsese's Silence. Andrew?
Yes.
What do we want to talk about? How do we want to go about this thing?
If we went over every single thing in this movie, it would take forever.
So let's not. Let's just talk about like maybe the moments that, you know, were kind of important, that were interesting to us, those kind of things.
So the movie starts off with Liam Neeson's character, Father Ferreira. The movie starts off with him already captured along with other Jesuit priests from Portugal in Japan, and they're being tortured by the Japanese. They're being burned with scalding water from a lake, like one of those
hot springs.
Mm-hmm. And just to give you the idea of what the Japanese think of this ministry of traveling Jesuit priests who are spreading the gospel in Japan, then I guess some time has passed since then. We come now to Portugal, where we have Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver's character, Father Rodriguez and Father Garupe, are being told by their father, Syrian Hines, who's saying, I've got word that Father Ferreira in Japan has now apostatized. He has renounced his faith, and he is now living as a Japanese. He has taken a Japanese wife, and he has Japanese children. And, of course, Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield don't believe this. They say it must be, it's hypocrisy. It's probably just propaganda from the Japanese to try and make us lose faith. We're going to go prove them wrong.
Yeah, we're going to go find him.
We're going to go find him. So they get to Japan, and they realize that Japan is far worse off than they could have ever imagined as far as the way Christians, not only ministers, but also Japanese who have converted to Christianity are being treated. There's an inquisitor who is going around and forcing people to renounce their faith lest they be murdered or tortured or anything until they renounce their faith.
Yeah.
Imprisoned, exactly.
He's asking them to step on an image of Christ, to kind of, disrespect it in that way.
Exactly. Some of them do. There's one character who we keep seeing over and over again.
I love that character.
Yeah, who is played by Yosuke Kubozuka. His character's name is Kichijiro. And he keeps coming back into the film over and over again. He renounces his faith just so he can get away, but then he'll come back and ask for forgiveness for renouncing his faith over and over and over. I think like 4 or 5 times in the movie he does it. He is like Judas to the max.
Yeah, no, and it's very, very much a metaphorical Judas. I mean, he's even given pieces of silver for turning in, the priest at one point. He turns in Andrew Garfield's character.
It's 300 pieces of silver.
And he's very much a Judas.
Yeah. So Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver get separated, and Adam Driver decides to go one direction, and then Andrew Garfield decides, I'm going to go... Was it that Adam Driver decided to go and find Ferreira, and Andrew Garfield decided to do something else?
Honestly, I don't remember why they split, except that they thought that was safer and better, because hadn't they been caught or something, or identified where they were?
The Inquisitor had made his way to the town that they were both hiding in.
Was that after they drowned the people on the crosses in the ocean?
That was after that happened. Yeah. That's when they decided to split up.
Yeah.
Which, what a heartbreaking scene, because the people in that town were just so, I hate saying it, they were so poor, but they were so wealthy at the same time with the way that they're like, we don't need anything else. We have Jesus in our lives. We have everything we need. And just whenever they had that taken from them, it was so detrimental. That's whenever I was saying, like, things were really uncomfortable to watch. The drowning scene, waiting for the high tide to come in, and they're saying that it took 4 days to kill him.
Yeah.
And that was hard to watch. But then they split up. And then Andrew Garfield starts to lose his mind a little bit from being heat exhaustion and eating like really salty foods and, being just dehydrated. He comes to a spring. He starts drinking from the spring. He looks in the reflection and it's Jesus instead of him. And then the Inquisitor captures him.
Yeah.
And from that point on, he is now a captor of the Japanese Empire. And stuff gets bad.
End.
Stuff gets bad for 2 hours.
Just to speak so far of things that I think are valuable to talk about that we can talk about in spoilers. Number one, when I talk about the themes of this movie, there's one, again, there's no way I'd be able to cover all the themes that this thing covers. But there is this overarching theme of, especially Father Rodriguez, who is Andrew Garfield's character, of him seeing himself as Jesus. And I don't just mean literally in the pond. I think that's a literal example of what this movie is trying to say about the priesthood in the Catholic Church, in that priests, because they have said often that they become kind of the living embodiment of who Jesus was for the church. Yeah. So, for instance, with sacraments like communion or those kind of things, that they are there to make sure that the body is actually the body and the blood is the blood, and they oversee that. Or, they will be the ones you have to confess to a priest, because they are the ones that can communicate to God. And so, so the movie has this incredible theme about how damaging that kind of pride can be to someone when they start to see themselves as Christ instead of wanting to be to embody what Christ taught. Like the difference of that.
So you interpreted that scene as he saw himself as Christ.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. That's not what I took it as. So
yeah.
I took it as him seeing, like, I'm still on the right path. I'm still doing good. Like, seeing Jesus was like a sign of, I know, because maybe he was starting to doubt himself and his journey, but now that he has seen this sign and that he was reinvigorated. So, but you interpreting it, because you probably are right.
Well, he even talks... later down the road, he does actually get to spend time with Father Ferreira again.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of explain a little bit of how it gets there. But just to draw out, Father Ferreira says something to him at one of the most crucial parts of the movie where he is watching other people be tortured for him.
Yeah.
About him seeing himself in that way. And about, I forget what the exact line was, but he says something about, you see yourself as Jesus to these people, but that is not the role that they put themselves in. They would never be as prideful as to say, oh, I'm just like Jesus because I'm doing this. But you are being prideful in that way, or something along those lines. So I saw that theme kind of here and there throughout the film. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So he's captured by the Japanese Empire. He's thrown before the Inquisitor. And the conversations that he has with the Inquisitor, I can see parts where the Inquisitor is starting to question his motives for the way he's treating the Christians. Because there are times in the movie where he's like, oh, well, maybe you're a little bit right, but he's still so set in his ways. And you can see parts where even Rodriguez, Andrew Garfield's character, is starting to question the Christian role in Japan. Like,
even what he believes,
Yeah, even what he believes and stuff. So it's fascinating watching in parts of the movie the back and forth because you do still see respect between these two men. It's opposing ideologies, but you still don't see like, I know I'm better than you because I believe in this. You see two men trying to understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated that. And even more, I really appreciated the relationship between Andrew Garfield and the interpreter, not the Inquisitor, but the interpreter, who was pretty much his Japanese companion from the moment he was captured to help him understand. where I thought the big reveal in the movie was going to turn out that the interpreter was the Inquisitor. I thought that that's where the movie was leading, that it was going to be this big plot twist, but it turns out that the Inquisitor was the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
But because there's a part in the movie where the interpreter takes Andrew Garfield's character to a beach, and at the beach, we find out that Father Garupe, Adam Driver's character, had been captured and had been told that Andrew Garfield had apostatized. That they lied to him.
Yeah.
And that
they both were told that about each other.
Exactly. So it is now time for Adam Driver's character to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to apostatize? Is he going to renounce his faith in order to save people from being murdered? And he decides not to, that he's going to die with his not disciples, his, what would you call them? His followers?
Sure.
His followers.
His flock.
His flock. There we go. That's a great word. And he decides that he's going to sacrifice his own life and die with his flock via drowning.
Mm-hmm.
They wrap up his followers in a, what would you call that?
It's some sort of I want to say bamboo, but it's something like that. It's just, but it's a constricting
wrap, like a cocoon.
Yeah, so they can't get out.
And they're thrown into the ocean. And Adam Driver, who is looking incredibly malnourished at this point, he jumps into the ocean to try and save even one of them, and he ends up drowning and dying. So after that, Andrew Garfield is taken back into his cage, and he is then introduced. The rumors are true. Father Ferreira is, in fact, living as a Japanese. He has a Japanese wife and a Japanese family, and he is trying to convince Andrew Garfield Rodriguez that Christianity is not needed in Japan. And this is what I was talking about with Liam Neeson really just being miscast, because I wasn't buying a man who had been living in Japan and taken in the Japanese culture, or the fact that he was Portuguese.
Yeah.
With that thick Irish accent. But what did you feel during this scene whenever you see Andrew Garfield sort of losing almost the last bit of hope?
Yeah. So I think it all culminates in the torture scene
at the very end
of I think there are 5 people that they have upside down hanging, with their head underground, and they cut them a little bit so that they're, the blood runs to their head, but it runs out so that they don't die.
Yeah.
But that they're just being tortured. And they basically, I found it really interesting, because when you think of martyrdom, you think of somebody dying for what they believe.
Yeah.
Which honestly is actually much easier than watching other people die for what you believe.
Yeah.
If you truly believe it. If it's
not put on you, then. It's
right,
put on
exactly.
else.
It's like, all of a sudden your choices have consequences for others. And so he finally gets to that point where he has to make that decision. And what's really interesting in that moment is you hear a voice on the movie that says, "It's okay. Go ahead."
Yeah.
And
the voice of Jesus.
He believes that's the voice of Jesus. I think the movie leaves that open to interpretation, because that voice is voiced by the same actor who played their supervisor in
Syrian Hines.
Yeah. And so I think the movie leaves very much open to interpretation that he could be justifying this himself.
Yeah.
And, saying that this is what, Jesus is saying to him. And the idea being both, how do you think you would react in this situation? What is what is true apostatizing, and what is just saving people's lives by saying something you don't believe? So it's really interesting. You're saying something you don't believe about something you don't believe. So the double negative, meaning you still actually believe it, but you don't want people to die for you, kind of thing. And I think it's really fascinating, and I found it to be really powerful and really effective. And I think that, again, the movie allows you to feel either way about it, like to come at it in kind of an ambiguous way.
Did you pick one?
For me?
Yeah.
It's so hard. Like
Okay.
I can't imagine being in that situation. I think I would have just like I wouldn't have gone there. Like that's me. Like I'm not wanted. So,
Yeah.
But we live in a much different world now than then as well. But if I were in that exact situation where somebody was asking me to renounce what I believe or other people are going to die, I honestly don't know that I could tell you how I would react. It's just that's why I found it so affecting.
So here's a question, and this is not really a film critique question, it's more of a moral question. Do you think that just simply saying it to save someone is actually renouncing faith, or do you think that it's just words at that point to save somebody?
That is the question, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answers to those kind of deep questions. My belief is that the God that I believe in, that I feel I have a relationship with, is a God of grace and forgiveness and understanding, and I don't believe that relationship has to be severed because of choices I make.
Yeah.
But I also believe that you can sever that relationship if you choose to, and so in my mind, that would be actually meaning it. But at the same time, I still think it could be right to stand up for it, and because at the end of the day, you're not killing those people.
Yeah.
The Japanese soldiers are killing those people because of what you believe. But that is not, that's what I find really interesting and that's what free speech is all about. It's about the idea that you can't force people to believe something. You have to have the ability to have conversation and let the ideas fight, not the people. Use words, not swords. That kind of stuff. So, anyways, all that to say, I don't know. I don't have the answers.
Okay.
I know how what I believe and how I live my life, but at the same time, I'm a fallible, not omniscient human being. I have no idea. There's nothing I can say for certain.
And maybe that was the idea that Scorsese was trying to deliver in this movie.
I think so. I think that was part of it.
Okay. So he does end up stepping on the slab of Jesus and crumbling over. And from that day on, he starts living as a Japanese, and he works for the Japanese the empire in order to... he works with Liam Neeson's character, and whenever something is imported into Japan, they have to look at it and determine whether or not it's of Christian... what am I trying to say here? If it's a Christian artifact,
like it's like
or
a
if
hidden Christian artifact kind of thing with crosses in it somewhere,
and if it does, then they throw it away. So that's
and
what
possibly punish the people who had it.
Yeah,
which another part where I'm going like that's wrong. Like I can't imagine if I still believed doing something like that.
Yeah,
that's a more direct, even way of harming people. So I don't know.
So he ends up living out the rest of his days until he dies in Japan. And he always said that he has renounced his faith. But whenever he is being given the Buddhist burial and he is being burnt, we see that he died holding a cross.
Yeah, his wife put a cross.
So did his wife put a cross in his hand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were we to understand that was that her saying, like, this was a part of your life, so this needs to be buried with you? Or was she saying that he had actually lived in secret as a Christian?
I think both are. I think it's open to interpretation as much as this movie. I think the intention is that he had always been a secret Christian.
Yeah, that's what I took away as well.
And I think there's also a conversation with Liam Neeson where Liam says something about our God or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is again after everything, and he says, "Did you just say our God?" And Liam says, "I don't think that happened," or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think some of that's there. I think the movie definitely intends to honor the idea of what these men had to go through and what they did, and to give them the grace of still believing, even though they had to, in the most horrible of circumstances, pretend like they didn't believe.
Yeah.
But But again, that's so nuanced. And I got to tell you, one of the things that I drew from it that I found really interesting, especially as it goes to kind of from the Japanese government perspective and what they're doing, and this goes again back to the idea of freedom of speech, those kind of things. You look at kind of where our culture is, or kind of things happening in the world right now with keep these kind of people out, don't let them in, all those kind of things. And you see where that line of logic can kind of lead and go to, in a movie like this. This is why the mistaken idea that you can force people to believe something leads to some awful places. And
yep.
You can force obedience, but you cannot force belief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just so it's just such a primary foundation of I think what this country is, or kind of how it was founded, is the idea that you do not force people to believe stuff. You let people believe whatever they want, but have a conversation if you disagree. That's fine. That's great.
I was just about to say that you can still have discussions about,
and you can still think they're wrong, and you can still tell them they're wrong. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's just you can't force them.
There's a difference between telling someone they're wrong and someone being wrong. Like, just because I say you're wrong doesn't mean you're wrong.
Right.
So,
yeah, so I saw a lot of that under there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right. There it is. Oh, I did want to mention before we're done, Siftpop will be off next week. So We'll take a week break, and we will see you back in a couple weeks.
Woo.
And we'll be, I'm guessing, chatting pop culture.
Yeah. I like that old culture of the pop.
We'll see you then.
The pop.